The most dangerous kind of decline is not the one that announces itself. It is the kind that arrives quietly, while life still looks normal. You still know your children's names. You still drive to the grocery store. You still pay the bills. But something is changing. You walk a little slower. You lose your train of thought a little faster. You stand up and need a second to steady yourself. And because none of it feels dramatic, most people do what people always do with silent decline. They explain it away. They call it stress. They call it bad sleep. They call it normal aging. But what if some of those tiny morning moments are not random at all? What if they are early messages from the brain, long before a scan, a diagnosis, or a crisis ever enters the picture? And what if one simple 60-second habit could help you catch those signals early, challenge the brain daily, and start protecting the very thing that keeps you independent? Because after 60, brain health is not just about memory. It is about balance, judgment, focus, reaction time, confidence, energy, the ability to move through your own house without fear. It is the power to stay yourself. So here is the habit. Before coffee, before the news, before your phone tells you what to worry about, stand up beside a sturdy chair or kitchen counter and for 60 seconds march in place while doing a mental task at the same time. Count backward from 100 by threes, or name animals, or list words that start with one letter. That is it. 60 seconds of movement plus thinking. And no, this is not some trendy brain hack built for clicks. It is simple because the body understands simple, and the brain responds to challenge. When you move and think at the same time, you are asking your brain to coordinate balance, rhythm, attention, breathing, and memory all at once. That matters more than most people realize, because one of the earliest signs of trouble is not always forgetting a birthday. Sometimes it is losing smoothness. You hesitate when turning. You slow down without noticing. You stop walking when you need to think. You feel less steady when your attention is divided. That is why this 60-second routine is so powerful. It is not magic. It is a daily signal check. If you can march, stay upright, keep your rhythm, and think clearly at the same time, that is good news. If you suddenly cannot, that is useful information too. And this is where most people miss the story. They think brain aging starts in the head. Very often, it shows up in the body first. In the pace of your walk, in your balance at the sink, in how quickly you recover when your routine gets disrupted. Your brain is not floating somewhere above your body, untouched by what your legs, lungs, ears, and sleep are doing. It is in constant conversation with all of them. So when that conversation starts breaking down, the symptoms may look ordinary. You drift toward a wall when you walk. You need the TV louder. You sit for hours and feel mentally foggy. You wake up tired even after enough time in bed. Each one seems small. Together, they tell a different story. And if you are thinking, come on, it's only 1 minute, good. That is exactly the point. Because the people who stay sharp the longest usually do not rely on one giant rescue. They build 100 tiny protections, and the first one often happens in the morning, when the day is still unwritten. That 60-second march is not just exercise. It is a wake-up call to your circulation, your coordination, and your attention. It tells your brain, we still adapt here, we still respond, we still train. That message matters after 60. Because the brain loves demand. Use it, and it keeps negotiating with the future. Stop challenging it, and the future starts making decisions for you. Now let's go deeper, because the morning minute works best when you understand what it is trying to reveal. If you do this tomorrow morning and you immediately feel unsteady, do not panic, but do not ignore it either. If your feet feel heavy, if one side seems less cooperative, if counting backwards suddenly scrambles your rhythm, or if you need to stop after 20 seconds because you cannot organize the movement and the thinking together, that is a sign to pay attention. Not fear, attention. Because silent decline thrives in delay. The longer people say, I'm sure it's nothing, the longer they go without fixing what is often still fixable. And sometimes the issue is not what people assume. It may not be just aging. It may be poor sleep. It may be dehydration. It may be hearing loss forcing the brain to work overtime all day just to decode speech. It may be a body that has gotten weaker from too much sitting and not enough resistance. It may be medication side effects. It may be blood pressure swings. It may be a balance system that has not been challenged in months. This is why I love habits that reveal truth. They cut through denial. A person can tell themselves they are fine, but a 60-second test of movement, attention, and control has a way of showing the gap between what we hope is true and what the body is actually doing. Now here is the part almost nobody talks about. The brain of an older adult is not only threatened by disease, it is threatened by passivity. Long chairs, long naps, long hours of sitting, long stretches of doing the same thing, at the same pace, in the same environment, with no real challenge. That is how sharpness fades without drama. Not in one event, but in 1,000 underused moments. So after your 60-second march, do one more thing. Refuse to turn your brain off for the rest of the day. Break up long sitting with brief movement. Stand, walk, stretch, or climb a few stairs. Your brain does not like being parked for hours. Neither do your blood vessels. And if you want one of the strongest long-game strategies we have, protect your strength. Not bodybuilder strength, not vanity strength, real-life strength. The kind that lets you get off the floor, carry groceries, climb stairs, catch yourself when you stumble. Because weak legs do not just threaten mobility, they threaten independence, and the latest research around aging and cognition keeps pointing in the same direction. Resistance training is not only for muscles, it appears to help the brain too. So if you want this morning habit to become more than a ritual, build around it. 3 days a week, train your body to push, pull, squat, lift, and rise. A sharper brain inside a weaker body is still a vulnerable life. Now let's talk about one of the most ignored causes of brain fog after 60. Water. Not because it sounds exciting, because it doesn't. And that is exactly why people miss it. As we age, thirst becomes less reliable. In other words, your body may need water long before your brain sends a strong signal to drink. So if you wake up dry, sluggish, headachy, or mentally flat, do not assume your brain is failing. Sometimes it is simply underfueled. A glass of water in the morning is not glamorous, but it is one of the easiest ways to remove an unnecessary burden from the brain. The same goes for food. If your breakfast is sugar, white bread, and nothing else, do not be shocked when your mind feels unstable by mid-morning. The brain loves steadiness. That is why the people who age well often eat in a way that looks boring from the outside and brilliant from the inside. More leafy greens, more beans, more nuts, more fish, more olive oil, more berries, less chaos, less ultra-processed food pretending to be convenience while quietly draining energy and consistency. And no, you do not need perfection. You need direction. A bowl of berries a few times a week is direction. A serving of leafy greens most days is direction. Choosing food that supports blood vessels instead of battering them is direction. Then comes sleep. This is the part many adults over 60 surrender too easily. They wake up 3, 4, 5 times a night and shrug like it is a tax of getting older. But broken sleep is not a harmless inconvenience. It changes how the brain clears waste, restores attention, and protects memory. If your nights are fragmented and your days are foggy, stop normalizing it. Look at the caffeine, look at the alcohol, look at the late heavy meals, look at the medications, look at snoring, look at sleep apnea, because a tired brain is often mistaken for an aging brain. And then there is hearing. This one surprises people. If you are constantly asking others to repeat themselves, if restaurants sound like noise instead of conversation, if the television keeps creeping louder year after year, your ears may not be the only thing paying the price. When hearing drops, the brain must spend more energy decoding sound and less energy on memory, attention, and social connection. Over time, that cost adds up. So get your hearing checked. Not someday, soon. Protecting your hearing is not cosmetic, it is cognitive. Do you see the pattern? Brain aging is rarely just a memory problem. It is often a systems problem. Movement, balance, strength, hydration, sleep, hearing, food, and attention all vote on how your later years will feel. That is why one tiny morning habit can be so powerful. It pulls all of that into focus. The 60-second march asks a quiet but important question every day. How well is my system working this morning? Not last year, not in theory, today. And that question can change a life. Because the people who stay independent are not always the people who started with the best genetics. Very often, they are the people who noticed small changes early and responded while they still had leverage. They did not wait for a medical scare to start paying attention. They trained before the emergency. They adjusted before the fall. They listened before the silence got louder. So here is the routine I want you to remember. Tomorrow morning, stand beside a counter or chair. Set a timer for 60 seconds. March in place with good posture. Lift your knees as high as feels safe, and at the same time count backward by threes. Name animals, or say the months in reverse. If that feels easy, good. That means your brain liked the challenge. If it feels hard, that does not mean you failed. It means you found your starting point. Do it again the next morning. And the next. Watch what changes. Your rhythm may get smoother. Your confidence may rise. Your thinking may feel quicker. And if instead you notice a sharp decline, unusual imbalance, dizziness, weakness, or a sudden change from your normal, take that seriously and talk to a medical professional. That is not fear. That is wisdom. Because the goal is not to obsess over every small symptom. The goal is to become the kind of person who notices early, acts early, and protects what matters before it slips away. Here is the truth. You do not keep your brain sharp after 60 by waiting for proof that it is getting dull. You keep it sharp by giving it a reason to stay alive, awake, and adaptive every single day. 1 minute, one challenge, one honest check-in with the system that carries your entire life. And maybe that is the real secret to longevity. Not chasing youth, but refusing silent decline. If this message hit home, don't just watch and move on. Try the 60-second morning challenge tomorrow. Come back and tell me how it felt. And if you know someone over 60 who is starting to slow down, lose confidence, or say, "I'm just getting old," send them this video. Because sometimes the habit that looks too small to matter is the one that changes everything.